Reborn in the first year the college entrance exams were restored, Chloe received her hard-earned university admission letter. But she immediately turned around and sold it, using the money to eat and drink like a queen at the state-run restaurant. When her bedridden, paralyzed husband found out, he was so furious that he stood right up. His childhood sweetheart cursed Chloe out, treating her worse than a dog. Looking at their reactions, Chloe laughed out loud. In her past life, her husband had begged her bitterly to sell the admission letter to his childhood sweetheart, claiming he needed the money for his medical treatments. Chloe had reluctantly agreed, staying home to serve her parents-in-law, toil in the fields, and care for her paralyzed husband. She had absolutely no idea that she was actually the long-lost biological daughter of a top military commander in the capital. The commander had recognized her handwriting on the college entrance exam paper and searched through the night to find the owner of the exam and reunite with his daughter. Seizing the opportunity, the childhood sweetheart used Chloe's identity to claim the parents for herself. Just like that, Sarah became the wealthy commander's daughter. Terrified that the truth would be exposed, Sarah conspired with Mark, and together they brutally tortured and murdered Chloe. It wasn't until right before her death that Chloe realized her paralyzed husband had never been sick at all. They had meticulously plotted everything just to steal her exam results. Hey guys, what would you do if you found out your husband faked being paralyzed just to steal your college admission letter for his mistress? Let's check out Chloe's epic comeback to save her own future right now. When she opened her eyes again, Mark was in the middle of staging an accident to fake his paralysis. Chloe smiled coldly. Overnight, she sold the admission letter to the most unreasonable and bossy daughter of the town's factory manager. This time, she wanted to see exactly what they would use to fight her. "Honey, I heard your university admission letter arrived," Mark said. Hearing the familiar words, Chloe gave a slight smile. It did indeed. Her husband, Mark, couldn't hide his excitement, showering her with praise for being so smart and clever. But then, his tone suddenly shifted, and his eyes immediately turned red. "If you go to the city for school, there will be no one to take care of me in this state. I'll be left with nothing but a dead end." "Oh, right, honey. I heard that Sarah didn't pass the exam and wants to buy an admission letter for a high price. Why don't you sell your scores to her? We can use the money to treat my illness. It kills two birds with one stone." Before he could even finish his sentence, Chloe nodded repeatedly. "Sell it. We definitely have to sell it." Rushing over, the educated youth, Sarah had a face full of smiles upon hearing this. "That's wonderful, Chloe. I thought you'd be greedy for school and abandon Mark. Since you're willing, I'll go get you $50 right now. Please don't refuse. You absolutely must take this money to get Mark checked out." Both of them were practically buzzing with excitement, their eyes full of anticipation. Chloe blinked and pushed away the hand Sarah was reaching out to her. "I said I was going to sell it, but I never said I was selling it to you," Chloe said. "I sold the admission letter and the university spot to the daughter of the clothing factory manager. She gave me a whole $500. Now, I'm heading to the state-run restaurant in town to eat something good, and then to the supply co-op to buy a couple jars of face cream. If you two are hungry, start a fire and cook yourselves some food. Make sure you don't starve." Saying this, Chloe pushed the door open and walked out. There was 2 seconds of dead silence behind her, followed by Mark's furious, disbelieving roar. "Stop right there! Who the hell told you to sell the admission letter?" Sarah's face turned completely pale as she immediately followed up with a furious curse through gritted teeth. "Chloe, have you no shame? That's a spot so many people beg for and can't get. How could you just sell it on your own?" Chloe giggled. "Others can't get it, but I was smart and clever enough to pass. What does that have to do with either of you?" Mark was so angry that he shot straight up onto his feet, grabbed the heavy wooden door latch, and charged at her. "You bitch, I was going to give that spot to Sarah. Who gave you the right to sell it to someone else without even discussing it with me?" Chloe bolted and ran for her life. Chloe ran, crying out as she went, "Help! Help, everyone! My husband is mad that I sold my admission letter to get money for his medical treatment, and now he wants to beat me to death." Since it was noon, the villagers were all taking their midday rest. At Chloe's loud cry, everyone immediately gathered around. Seeing Mark looking so alive and kicking, someone instantly shrieked, "Mark, aren't you paralyzed? How are you suddenly better?" Mark froze in his tracks at those words, only just remembering that he had been deliberately faking paralysis for the past few days. With a heavy thud, the wooden door latch fell from his hand, and he stood there completely stunned. Chloe ran straight into the arms of Mrs. Davis, the head of the Women's Federation, and burst into loud sobs. "Mrs. Davis, you have to help me. My husband was faking his paralysis just to force me to sell my admission letter to Sarah. I had good intentions and sold it to someone else for a high price, wanting to get money to help treat his illness, but now they want to beat me to death. Mrs. Davis was a very upright woman, and her face instantly darkened. She led the villagers in giving Mark a severe scolding. Sarah gave Chloe a hateful glare and quickly came up with an idea. "Everyone, please stop scolding him," she interrupted. "Actually, Mark's legs were cured yesterday through my massage therapy. We just hadn't had the chance to tell Chloe yet. We wanted to wait until her acceptance letter arrived to give her a big surprise. That's why we were angry that Chloe took it upon herself to act alone. Oh, it's all just a misunderstanding." Hearing her sophisticated sophistry, the villagers all calmed down. Chloe hadn't originally intended to use the faked illness to completely crush them right away. Cooperating with the story, she let out a sigh. "You actually kept such a huge, joyful event from me," she remarked. "Anyone who didn't know better would think the two of you were the married couple." Among the spectating villagers, someone immediately echoed, "That's right. This Sarah runs to Mark's house day after day, for one reason or another. I think the two of them look more like a real couple. If it weren't for the fact that Chloe is an orphan without parents, given how beautiful and hardworking she is, how could she have ever married Mark? I'm telling you, Mark, you better not step out of line and let her down." With a dark face, Mark repeatedly nodded in agreement, while Sarah blushed and lowered her head. After the crowd offered their opinions, they eventually dispersed to their respective homes to rest. Seeing that no one else was around, Mark's expression became completely cold. "Chloe, do you think your wings have grown strong just because you passed the college entrance exam? Today, you caused Sarah to lose face in the village. If you don't apologize to Sarah and pay her another $500, you can forget about ever entering the door of my family home again." Chloe curved her lips into a smile as she looked at the two people who had personally tortured and murdered her in her previous life. "Thank you for your kindness," she said, "but I truly do not want to enter the door of your family home. The daughter of the clothing factory manager told me she arranged a job for me at the factory, and I happen to be going to report for duty today. I won't be coming back in the future." In her past life, her parents had relied on their own efforts to recognize her handwriting and searched everywhere for the owner of the exam paper. This time, they would surely follow the clues to the clothing factory. She could not afford to miss the opportunity to reclaim her biological parents again. While the two of them were staring at each other in blank dismay, Chloe bolted and left. Arriving at the town's clothing factory, she was able to start working immediately, relying on the note given to her by the factory manager's daughter, Grace. For some reason, Mark and Sarah had not followed her. But it made sense. In this short life of hers, she had always been entangled with Mark, so he was probably certain that she couldn't manage without him and would creep back in disgrace before long. Actually, Chloe was happy to have the peace and quiet. Working in the factory was far easier than serving Mark at home. In her past life, she had been an orphan, drifting with nothing to rely on, surviving by eating food given by 100 different families. Mark's family had possessed good conditions, and he had often brought her some food. Over time, Chloe couldn't help but feel grateful to him. Mark's parents had liked her grounded and motivated personality, and they eagerly arranged their engagement. She originally thought she would live happily ever after with Mark, but after Sarah inserted herself into their lives, everything changed. Mark began to despise Chloe's lack of sophistication, disgusted by the fact that she was just an ignorant country girl. He blatantly fooled around with Sarah all day long. He was absolutely certain that since Chloe had no maiden family to back her up, she wouldn't have the guts to make a scene. But he never expected that she would be able to get into a university on her own. Afterward, the two of them schemed, faking his illness to steal her admission letter, and then stole her identity, ultimately torturing and murdering her in their home. Chloe swore she would never let history repeat itself. She worked peacefully at the clothing factory, doing her job during the day and taking her $500 out to enjoy herself after her shifts. It wasn't long before news of her situation was brought back to Mark and Sarah by some fellow villagers. They couldn't sit still any longer and aggressively came to the factory to corner her. "Chloe, do you have any shame?" Mark demanded. "Do you not know the situation at home? How can you only care about enjoying yourself and not buy anything for the family? My mom is sick with anger because of you. You won't even pay a dime for her medicine, yet you buy yourself a Dacron shirt? Are you trying to seduce other men?" Hearing this, the way the factory workers looked at Chloe immediately changed. "He's right," someone whispered. "Ever since Chloe started working here, she's never gone home. She just wanders around the factory after work. What's going on with that?" Another chimed in. "Tell me about it. She's an orphan girl without parents, so where does she get the money to eat at restaurants every day? Last time, I even saw her buy a gold bracelet." Someone else added, "Not to mention all that, think about it. We all got in through connections. She has no background, so how did she just waltz in and take a worker's spot?" Suddenly, everyone's gaze toward Chloe was filled with suspicion. Chloe stood there stunned. She never expected that just to extort money from her, her husband would team up with his childhood sweetheart to spread dirty rumors about her. Even though she had been reborn, she was ultimately still a girl, in her early 20s, and she was so infuriated that for a moment she couldn't even speak. Sarah, her face full of smugness, stepped forward and grabbed her. "You bitch," Sarah sneered. "We hit the nail on the head, so you're too scared to talk back, aren't you? If you don't hand over the money right now, we're going to report you for hooliganism." Mark sneered coldly. Letting Sarah hold Chloe down, he reached straight out to snatch her gold bracelet. "I'll spare you this once," he said, "but you are not allowed to keep working here. Hurry up and come home with me." Go home? Chloe had sold her scores to the factory manager's daughter, specifically to wait here for her commander parents. How could she possibly leave with him? Recalling her tragic death in her past life, she slapped Sarah away and delivered a vicious kick right to Mark's groin. "You shameless pair of dogs," she yelled. "Where do you get the nerve to spread rumors about me? Sarah, you're a girl, yet every day after work, you run straight to my house and stick yourself to Mark so tight you can't be peeled off. If you ask me, you're the one who looks like she's selling herself. And Mark, you bastard, you faked being paralyzed just to scam me out of my admission letter. It's only been a few days, did you already forget? Yet you still have the gall to come to the factory and spread rumors about me? You're both just bullying me because I don't have a family to back me up. I'm divorcing you." In the past, Chloe had always been insecure and introverted, not even daring to speak loudly in front of others. But having been reborn, as someone who had already died once, she no longer had any fear of such things. Her words were sharp and merciless as she cursed Mark and Sarah out. They had targeted her because she didn't like to talk, giving them the audacity to spread rumors about her in broad daylight. They never expected her to strike back so cleanly and decisively, and for a moment, they were too stunned by her scolding to react. It took a long while for Mark to finally snap out of it. He charged forward and slapped her right across the face. "You dare to slander Sarah? I think you have a death wish. Apologize to Sarah immediately." Gritting her teeth, Sarah also began hitting and kicking her. "Chloe, it's one thing for you to sneakily sell yourself, but how dare you drag my name through the mud? Mark is your legally married husband. If he didn't have proof, would he dare to say this in front of everyone?" Hearing this, the crowd all nodded in agreement. That's right, what man would willingly admit his wife is cheating on him? This Chloe must have done something to betray her husband. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come all the way to the factory to make a scene. With this, Chloe's reputation would be completely ruined. From now on, no one in the surrounding towns and villages would ever hire her. Sarah's eyes were fierce as she struck out at Chloe, ruthlessly. 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Chloe was held down by Mark and forcefully took several hard slaps. Just as she was struggling with all her might to break free, a shout suddenly rang out from outside the crowd. "Stop fighting! Stop fighting! The factory manager's daughter is here." Seeing that Chloe had been beaten to the point of a bloody nose, Grace immediately asked the bystanders what had happened. The workers all talked over each other, claiming she was prostituting herself. Chloe hurriedly tried to defend herself. "Others might not know, but you know exactly where my money came from." Before she could finish, she saw Grace's face suddenly turn cold. Chloe's heart suddenly dropped. Oh no. Grace had bought her college entrance exam scores, and was surely terrified that the truth would come to light. Now that someone had stepped up to get rid of her, Grace probably wouldn't help her at all. Instead, she would likely side with Mark and Sarah to drive her to her death. As soon as the thought crossed her mind, Grace spoke up. "They're right. I did see Chloe acting suspiciously, leaving with different men. Chloe, I kindly let you into my family's clothing factory, and yet you dare to corrupt the morals of our factory like this? You are fired right now." Hearing this, Sarah was overjoyed. Seeing Mark kick Chloe to the ground, she stepped forward and started tearing at Chloe's clothes. "You shameless bitch! We're going to strip you naked and parade you through the streets before taking you back to deal with you." Chloe knew all too well the importance of a woman's reputation in this era, and she struggled relentlessly. But incited by Grace, everyone swarmed forward, desperately beating and cursing at her. Soon, her clothes were torn to shreds. Countless disgusting hands brushed over her body, and some people started making lewd comments about her figure. Chloe knew that if this continued, it would only lead to a dead end for her. She forced herself to stay calm. Gathering all her strength and waiting for the right moment, she kicked Sarah, who was trying to pull off her pants square, in the face, sending her flying several meters away. Mark was heartbroken and immediately let go of Chloe to go check on Sarah's condition. Chloe took the opportunity to get up and try to run, but someone grabbed her tightly by her braid. "You woman, since you're already selling it, let us have a look. It's not like it'll kill you." A group of people burst into raucous laughter and prepared to lay hands on her again. Just at that moment, a military jeep came to a screeching halt at the entrance of the clothing factory. The doors opened, and 2 armed guards rushed out first. "What are you doing in broad daylight? The commander is here. Everyone behave yourselves." Earlier, when she was being beaten and cursed at, Chloe hadn't shed a single tear. But now, looking at the guards in military uniforms, tears streamed down her face instantly. From now on, she was no longer that helpless, easily bullied orphan girl. Unable to hide her excitement, Chloe rushed to the front of the car in a few steps, standing on her tiptoes, wanting to see what her parents actually looked like. Seeing that her clothes were torn and disheveled, the guards tacitly lowered their heads. "Comrade, please pay attention to your appearance." Sarah immediately chimed in. "You don't know this, but this Chloe is a shameless slut. She acts all seductive to lure men, and is always running around half-naked like this. We'll take her away right now." Hearing this, Mark stepped forward and grabbed her arm fiercely, trying to drag her away. Unable to break free, Chloe simply dropped to her knees by the car door. "I didn't. They are slandering me. They stripped my clothes off and wanted to throw me out on the street to ruin my reputation. Commander, you must help me." The couple was just pushing the car doors open to step out. Seeing her in this state, they were both startled and immediately reached out to help her up. None of the workers at the clothing factory had ever seen such high-ranking officials before, and at this moment, they were all frightened into total silence. Amidst the dead silence, the commander slowly spoke up. "We heard that the top scorer of the college entrance exam is in this clothing factory. May I ask who it is?" End quote. Sarah immediately shot Chloe a hateful glare. Grace was a bit surprised. Unsure whether this was a blessing or a curse, she hid behind the crowd and spoke up timidly. "It's me. How can I help you?" The commander's wife's eyes instantly turned red. In a few steps, she rushed over to Grace. "My sweet girl, Mom has missed you to death." Grace was completely dumbfounded. "What is going on? Before she could finish her sentence, the commander also strode over. "Silly child, we are your mom and dad. Over the years, we've thought of you every single moment. Thank goodness you were so outstanding and made a name for yourself in the college entrance exam. Otherwise, Mom and Dad might never have found you in this lifetime." The 2 of them embraced Grace, crying uncontrollably. Both Sarah and Mark knew that Chloe was the one who had sold the college entrance exam scores to Grace, so for a moment, they all looked at Chloe in astonishment. Chloe rolled her eyes. Just as she was about to step forward and explain the situation, Sarah suddenly rushed out. "No, Mom and Dad, you've got the wrong person. I'm actually the top scorer of the exam. I fell seriously ill, and out of desperation, I sold my exam scores to Grace." At this moment, Grace also realized that this wasn't just some accident. This was an overwhelming fortune falling into her lap. She glanced excitedly at Chloe, and seeing that Chloe seemingly didn't want to fight for it, she felt relieved and forcefully shoved Sarah away. "Mom, Dad, don't listen to her nonsense. I am the top scorer of the exam." Sarah grew anxious and frantically interrupted Grace. "Don't listen to this bitch's nonsense. She's the daughter of the clothing factory manager. She has a mom and a dad. There's no way she could be your child." With this massive wealth in front of her, Grace had no regard for her adoptive parents anymore and immediately snapped back. "What the hell do you know? My parents can't have kids. I was picked up by them. I'm not their biological child at all." Seeing the 2 of them instantly tearing into each other, the commander frowned imperceptibly, and the warmth on his wife's face also faded. "Enough! We are looking for the owner of this top-scoring college entrance exam paper. Do you have any idea what consequences you'll face for lying in front of a commanding officer?" Hearing this, both women shrank back, but neither was willing to let go of this juicy prize right in front of them. Their eyes darted around as they desperately tried to think of a way to prove themselves. Grace reacted the fastest, immediately ordering someone to go to her house and fetch the admission letter. "Mom, Dad, the person you are looking for is me. The admission letter clearly states that it's me. There can be no mistake," Grace said. Listening from the side, Chloe almost burst out laughing. It seemed that Grace had already changed the name on the admission letter to her own. At this moment, Sarah couldn't sit still any longer. "Mom, Dad, I told you earlier, I sold my scores to her. Of course she has the admission letter." But she didn't know that along with the admission letter came an acceptance letter, personally written by the principal. "I still have it at home. I'll have someone go get it right now." As she spoke, she gave Mark a push. Understanding her intention, Mark bolted and ran off. Not long after, both groups returned. Looking at the admission letter and the acceptance letter in front of them, the couple's frowns deepened. "This isn't right." The exam paper we saw clearly stated that the examinee's name is Chloe. In an instant, all eyes turned toward her. By this time, Chloe had already changed into the jacket provided by the guard and was busy thanking him. Feeling everyone's probing gazes, she turned around unhurriedly. I am Chloe. In her past life, in order to completely take over her identity, Sarah had not only murdered her, but also stolen her name, living a carefree and happy life under the name Chloe. This time, stealing her identity wouldn't be so easy. Earlier, her clothes had been almost entirely torn to shreds. To avoid any impropriety, her parents hadn't looked at her closely at all. Now, as they carefully observed her appearance, both of their breaths hitched. Meeting their gazes and looking at her mother's face, Chloe couldn't help but marvel at the resemblance. It was truly too similar. Her face shape was just like her mother's, and her eyes and brows resembled her father's. It was as if the two of them had been taken apart and put back together again to create her. Her mother's eyes instantly turned red. Just as she carefully took Chloe's hand and was about to speak, Grace stepped in front of Chloe to block her. There's a misunderstanding here, Grace stammered. Then, shooting a threatening glare at Chloe, she demanded, Chloe, come over here quick. I have something to say to you. Knowing that her parents had relied on their own efforts to recognize her exam paper, Chloe wasn't the least bit afraid of the other two fighting over it. She followed Grace to the side. Grace's expression instantly changed as she grabbed Chloe tightly by the collar. Chloe, I'm warning you. Don't meddle. As long as you obediently cooperate and give up this position to me, I'll have my parents adopt you as their goddaughter. From now on, this entire clothing factory will be yours. But if you dare to resist, be careful, because I won't hold back. I will have all the workers align their stories and say you're a whore who sells her body. Think about it yourself. Would they welcome a daughter like that? Fearing Chloe wouldn't believe her, she gritted her teeth and added another sentence. Don't worry, as long as you cooperate with me in claiming them as my parents, I will definitely give you another sum of money. $5,000. Oh no, $50,000. Having upped the ante herself, Grace confidently patted Chloe on the shoulder. How about it? That's generous enough, right? Seeing Chloe nod, Grace assumed she had been bought off by the $50,000 and eagerly trotted back. Chloe was about to follow her when, after just 2 steps, Mark blocked her path. Feeling a bit apprehensive, he first observed her expression. Seeing no reaction from her, he hesitantly spoke up. Chloe, what happened earlier was just me acting in the heat of the moment. Please don't take it to heart. As long as you help me prove that Sarah is the commander's daughter, I am willing to stay in our hometown with you and treat you well for the rest of my life. I know you've always been afraid that something might happen between Sarah and me. You can rest assured this time. Once Sarah becomes the commander's daughter, I will definitely break it off with her. Afraid that Chloe wouldn't believe him, Mark raised 3 fingers and swore to heaven. Looking at his confident demeanor, Chloe sneered. She couldn't fathom why he thought he was worth more than the identity of a commander's daughter. Seeing her smile, Mark felt relieved and grabbed her hand. Chloe, I knew you had me in your heart and would do anything for me. Chloe shook Mark off and took large strides back to her parents. At this moment, Grace, fully expecting to win, was already holding the mother's hand and acting affectionately. Seeing Chloe return, Grace nodded at her and immediately spoke up. Mom, Dad, the signature on the college entrance exam paper was just a little joke between her and me. We made a bet to swap names when taking the test, which caused this whole mix-up, right, Chloe? Meeting everyone's probing gazes, Chloe shook her head. No, that exam paper is my own. Grace hadn't expected Chloe to change sides at the last minute, and her face contorted with anger. Chloe, you bitch, what did you promise me? I am the factory manager's daughter. How dare you treat me like this? I'm firing you right now. Chloe shrugged nonchalantly, raising her eyebrows as she coldly watched the furious Grace. When I was being falsely accused earlier, didn't you already fire me once? Grace's glare looked as though she wanted to kill Chloe, but the moment she stepped forward, the guards stepped in to block her. Looking at the heavily armed guards, Grace stomped her feet in place, but couldn't harm a single hair on Chloe's head. Standing nearby, Sarah and Mark were overjoyed when they saw that Chloe refused to help Grace. Chloe, quickly tell them that the owner of that exam paper is me, Sarah urged. Chloe rolled her eyes. You spread dirty rumors about me in broad daylight and even tried to strip my clothes off to parade me through the streets. Let me ask you, why on earth should I give my identity to you? Sarah's face instantly went pale. Mark was shocked upon hearing this and immediately argued back. Chloe, don't play dumb. That exam paper belongs to Sarah. She deliberately wrote your name on it to help you. How can you just turn your back and deny it? Chloe laughed out loud. Since you insist on claiming that, let me ask you, what did you write for the essay section? And what was the answer to the final math question? Sarah was left completely speechless by the questions. Humiliated and furious, she raised her hand to strike Chloe, but the guards instantly blocked her and shoved her back. Losing her balance, Sarah reached out her arm to catch her fall. Staring at the bracelet on her wrist, the commander and his wife abruptly stood up. "Where did you get that bracelet?" Sarah didn't understand the reason behind the question, but she reacted quickly. With tears welling up in her eyes, she dropped to her knees with a heavy thud. "Mom personally gave this to me before we were separated." Chloe happened to look over at Mark, who awkwardly avoided her gaze. That bracelet was the only item her biological parents had left her that could prove her identity. It had suddenly gone missing not long ago, and she hadn't been able to find it anywhere. She had asked Mark about it, but he had insisted he had never seen it. She never expected that no matter how carefully she guarded against outsiders day and night, it was the thief in her own house that was impossible to defend against. It turned out that the bracelet had been stolen by Mark and given to Sarah. Furious, Chloe grabbed Sarah and tried to snatch it right back. Confident that she had the upper hand, Sarah immediately cried out to the commander and his wife for help. "Mom said that this was a gift she personally gave me, telling me I had to take good care of it. Why do you insist on stealing my things?" Sarah sobbed. "Mom, Dad, back at home, this woman always relied on her good looks and many suitors to bully me. Now, right in front of you, she still has the audacity to try and rob me of my things. You absolutely have to stand up for me." The mother's gaze was anxious, her eyes darting back and forth between Chloe and Sarah's faces. Seeing this, Mark immediately stepped in to speak up for Sarah. However, right at that moment, having heard that the commander was in town searching for his long-lost relative, all the village officials rushed over. The moment Chloe saw Mrs. Davis, the head of the Women's Federation, tears instantly streamed down her face. "Mrs. Davis, Mark stole my bracelet and gave it to Sarah. Now Sarah is trying to use my things to claim my parents. What should I do?" In this impoverished era, jewelry was an absolute rarity. Nobody had any, but Chloe had always possessed that delicate bracelet. Everyone in the village knew who that bracelet belonged to. Their eyes all fell on Sarah's wrist, and with just one glance, they confirmed it was indeed Chloe's. "Mark, it's one thing that you normally mistreat Chloe, but now that her parents are here, how can you still try to steal her identity?" Someone scolded. "I've suspected you two were up to no good for a long time. Chloe works so hard to earn work points, and you force her to give them all to Sarah. When Chloe catches fish in her own nets, you send more than half of it to Sarah's house. Now that Chloe's parents are here, you actually dare to blatantly steal her identity. Mark, Sarah, the term heartless and ungrateful couldn't be more fitting for you two." Scolded so harshly, the two of them flushed red with embarrassment and anger. Yet, stubbornly refusing to give up this chance to soar to the top, they desperately argued their case. However, no one was a fool. At this point, how could her parents still be unable to tell their identities apart? Her mother gently stroked Chloe's hair and looked earnestly into her eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you right away." The tears Chloe had been holding back instantly fell. Hugging her mother, she sobbed uncontrollably. "It's not your fault, it's just that the enemies are too cunning." Prompted by her words, her parents immediately looked toward Sarah and Grace. Seeing that the truth was completely exposed, the two women were so terrified that their legs went weak. Grace, who usually threw her weight around based on her status as the factory manager's daughter, was now so frightened by just a single stern glance from the commander that she burst into tears. "Why are you looking at me? You just said you were looking for the owner of the exam paper. Chloe sold her scores to me, so I became the owner of the paper," Grace cried defensively. "If you want to blame anyone, blame Chloe for her own greed and wanting to enjoy herself. She practically forced her way to my door and insisted on selling her scores to me for $500. It's your daughter who has no shame. I never wanted to fight her for it." Her mother looked at Chloe with a confused gaze. Chloe sighed. "Mom, this whole thing has to start with my husband, Mark." Suddenly being called out, Mark immediately changed his expression. "Chloe, I was mistaken just now. I didn't expect that you really were the commander's daughter," he said smoothly. "Mom, Dad, let me introduce myself. I am Chloe's husband. We have a marriage certificate and are a proper married couple." "Chloe, this is so wonderful. From now on, you won't have to envy others for having parents anymore." Listening to his incredibly fake, affected voice, Chloe raised an eyebrow and pulled away to create some distance between them. "Excuse me, Mark. Earlier, when you were spreading dirty rumors about me in broad daylight and tearing my clothes to shreds, I already told you that I am divorcing you. So, these are my parents, not yours." Mark never expected that Chloe would show him zero respect like this. He hurriedly grabbed the corner of her clothes to plead with her. "Chloe, what happened earlier was all a misunderstanding. I was just too impulsive and too worried about you. That's why I acted that way." I swear to heaven right now, I will never go near Sarah again. Is that still not enough? I truly love you. Chloe, you can't be this heartless to me. Chloe rolled her eyes and looked at her parents. As you can see, I grew up eating food from 100 different families. To repay his family's kindness, I married Mark. But he had an illicit affair with Sarah. First, he faked an illness to trick me into selling my admission letter to Sarah. When that scheme failed, he blatantly tried to steal my identity and stole my bracelet. I absolutely must divorce him. Her parents had no idea she had been living such a bitter life out in the world. The guard stepped forward and kicked Mark to the ground. Bullying our commander's daughter like this, just you wait, kid. Mark trembled in fear and reached out his hand, trying to pull Chloe. Chloe, they are so fierce. You definitely can't bear to see me get punished, right? Hurry up and plead for me. Save me. Chloe kicked Mark's hand away. When you faked being paralyzed to trick me into selling my scores, when you stole my precious belonging to give to your sweetheart, when you tried to strip off my clothes in broad daylight, why didn't you ever think about saving me? Mark's pleas caught in his throat, and he finally fell silent. Finally, Chloe's gaze turned to Sarah. Relying on the fact that she was an educated youth from a big city who had been sent to the countryside, Sarah had always found various excuses to belittle and insult Chloe. Now that Chloe had suddenly become the commander's daughter, Sarah no longer had her former arrogance. All that remained was begging for mercy. Chloe, I didn't want to. It was Mark, Sarah pleaded. He said he had a way to trick you out of your scores. Faking the illness was all his idea, and slandering you to take the opportunity to steal your gold bracelet was his idea too. Chloe, I was just following his orders. I never wanted to hurt you. Chloe curved her lips into a smile. Now that death is at your door, you remember to beg for mercy. Too bad it's too late. Mom, Dad, this shameless pair teamed up to force me into selling my college entrance exam scores. I know that doing so betrayed the way you raised me in the past, but your daughter was all alone out here, isolated and helpless, and I truly couldn't fight against them. Now that the truth is out, you must help me get a divorce. Her parents nodded and had the two directly tied up and taken back to the guest house. Along the way, Sarah cursed endlessly, while Mark begged bitterly for mercy. If it weren't for her memories of her past life, Chloe probably really would have been soft-hearted enough to forgive them. But the experience of dying tragically, at the hands of those closest to her in her past life, followed her like a nightmare every waking moment, torturing her. She had to get her revenge. With her parents' help, Chloe successfully obtained her divorce certificate. Not only that, but it was also arranged for her to qualify for next year's college entrance exams, giving her a year to review and prepare to take the test again. As for Grace, Chloe had felt something was off when Grace promised her $50,000. She asked her parents to send someone to investigate, and sure enough, they discovered that Grace's factory manager parents had been embezzling funds. They were immediately investigated and prosecuted. This spoiled young lady, who had always relied on her wealthy background to bully Chloe, saw her good days come to an end. The incident of buying Chloe's college entrance exam scores was reported, and Grace permanently lost her eligibility to take the exam. For the rest of her life, she could only rely on her own two hands to scratch a living from the dirt. Sarah, having repeatedly framed Chloe, had her misdeeds broadcasted throughout the village by Mrs. Davis. After that, no one was willing to go near her anymore. She didn't even manage to secure the qualifications to return to the city and was trapped in the village for the rest of her life. Mark came looking for Chloe many times seeking a reconciliation, but after being rejected countless times, he finally gave up. Out of options, he married his beloved Sarah, and the two of them lived out their days consumed by petty squabbles and endless trivial disputes. Sarah despised Mark for being useless, while Mark blamed Sarah for not being the commander's daughter and failing to provide him with any help. As time went on, the two of them argued every single day, eventually escalating into vicious physical fights day and night. The following year, Chloe was once again admitted to a university. Along with her admission letter came a letter from Mrs. Davis, the head of the Women's Federation. In the letter, she wrote that Sarah, unable to tolerate the worthless Mark any longer, had slipped him rat poison, intending to kill him so she could find another way out. However, she had used too small of a dose, and Mark didn't die. Using his remaining strength, he fought back and murdered Sarah right at the doorstep of their home. Although Mark survived, it was poison after all, and no one was willing to save him. Ultimately, the toxins left him completely paralyzed. Looking at the word paralyzed in the letter, Chloe let out a long sigh. Back then, he had used a faked paralysis to steal her entire life, and now he had truly become paralyzed. He had certainly made his lie a reality. It was just a pity that, from now on, there would never be anyone willing to sacrifice their own future to help treat his illness ever again.
Such a satisfying ending. The guy who faked his paralysis to con his wife actually ended up paralyzed for real. What goes around comes around. Chloe's decisiveness reminds us that knowledge and self-respect are things no one can ever steal from you. Never let anyone walk all over you. What did you think of her move? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.